The Twins lost the first 3 games of the series against Cleveland. Congrats on a big bounce-back win yesterday to cut the division lead to 6. We said, you know what? The audience hasn't been responding to our Twin stuff lately. The team is just tanking. Let's start looking forward. And there'll be a couple little Twins conversations sprinkled in here and there just to kind of put the season to bed. But ultimately, let's look forward to the optimism surrounding, I think it's optimism, surrounding the winter sports teams that are about to embark on training camps. And we start on this Monday with the Minnesota Wild. Wow. Judd, you want to lead us off here? Do you want to take the face off here?
Sure I will. Thursday, first day on the ice for training camp. That's right. Right around, I believe.
Dude, that's crazy.
The first preseason game, if I'm not mistaken, is like a week after that, if that. So anyway,
in a week and a half, the Wild are going to be on the ice playing actual hockey.
Yep, and I will be in the X observing, taking notes, pontificating. Judd's Hockey Show returning on a full-time basis. Yes, binoculars in play.
Line combinations. God, that's great.
So here's my statement. My statement is, it's Rossi time. It's Rossi time. Enough with the hype. Enough with the teases. Oh, he's doing great in Iowa. Now he's going to play a game with the Wild, but then he's going to go back down. Marco Rossi. You can talk all you want about Ryan Hartman's projected as our top center going into the season, and Eriksson Ek is 2, and blah, blah, blah. Marco Rossi is now at a point in his life and career, healthy as can be, coming off a really good minor league season, which, by the way, was smart, but it is now time for him to make an impact. And by that, I mean to play a lot. I mean to be successful. So, this is not a cute story. There are guys who were drafted around him who are now playing full-time as well. So, this is not a reach of, it's only been a couple of years. No, it is Marco Rossi time, and the Wild, if they are going to be as successful as they want to be this season, need him to make an impact at a very difficult position, but he needs to show why he was a first-round pick. I am not down on him at all, but I do think that there is definitely some pressure now to prove yourself to be the player that Bill Guerin expected you to be.
Yeah, he's going to be damn good, dude. I mean, the Wild just haven't had a legit center prospect like this in years, too. That's this highly touted. Charlie Coyle was coming up a little bit when he was traded from the San Jose Sharks, but they've had a lot of good wingers come up. Granlunds and Niederreiters and Zuckers, and they've had plenty of decent wingers that have come up and have been successful for them. I mean, having a center, man, that it's like having an ace. It's in baseball. It's a rarity. It's hard to find. It's even more harder to make him homegrown. And he has all the pedigree in the world. I'm a Judd. And don't put him just on the bottom 6 role. And Bill Guerin has said that numerous times. He's not just gonna be called up here to play some 12, 13 minutes in the bottom 6. If he's gonna play, he's gonna play meaningful and impactful minutes. I'm excited to watch him too.
Who do you guys think at the end of the season will be regarded as the second best player on this Wild team?
That's actually a really good question.
Dismissing Spurgeon, who they'll try and sell as that.
Let's say among forwards. Forwards.
Fair enough. I would hope. That's right. That Rossi
Macadac making you guys think about hockey. That's right.
Makes me miss the whisper though.
I would love a full Judd's Hockey Show breakdown of the you guys should set your own betting odds for who will the second best forward be behind Kirill Kaprizov.
I think Rossi. I think Rossi stands a real chance of being in contention, or should be.
Really?
My guess is, just off the top of my head, my guess is it's Boldy. But
that would be big. I mean, wouldn't that be huge for the team if Boldy ascended to be the second best player? That would be great too.
Yeah,
absolutely. But with where Rossi plays, and to Dex's point, and he's right, with the fact that he should be by the end of the season a top 6 guy. Mm-hmm. It should. If Marco Rossi is the second best player at forward for the Wild to Kaprizov, it should not be a shock.
Mm-mm. I mean, if you're going by points, Zuccarello probably is going to be second because he's going to be passing and getting probably 60 assists.
35.
He's like my age.
right?
He's like
Yeah,
my age.
Right,
He's getting
but
pretty
I mean,
old,
but
man.
I guess that's
Long in
it's
the
the
tooth,
parameters of what you classify as the second best player. If you're going by points, then I'll give me Matt Zuccarello. He'll probably be second in points because he's going to be feeding Kirill Kaprizov and he's going to be on the top line.
Phil's
But in terms of
delving
impact and like actual stardom, because Matt Zuccarello's on the other side of 30. Yeah, it's probably Boldy or maybe even Rossi.
Doesn't this feel good, guys? I mean, we could have spent the last 5 or 10 minutes just depressingly burying the Twins again, and here we are. We're
Hockey's
projecting
back, man.
how good the Wild can be. God, this is refreshing. And I want to tell people that thought, oh, well, what are they doing? They're trading. They're getting rid of Fiala, and what are they? They're dumping defensemen to try and make up for the cap situation. Oh God, they're going to take a step back. I've heard that on Judd's hockey show too. But my statement is the demise of the Minnesota Wild has been greatly over-exaggerated this offseason. In fact, stake.com, not STEAK.com. I'm sure that's a great website too.
Great.
STAKE, like stakes, like betting. Okay?
Thank you.
Stake.com has projected point totals for each conference a couple days ago, going into the weekend. And so this is what one sort of sports betting website thinks. They got the Avalanche far and away as the best team in the West. Again, they are projected at 111.5 points. Oilers 103.5, Flames 102.5, Wild second in the division, fourth in the conference at just as 99.5 roundup. They're projected to still tally 100 points as a team, which would be down from last year. But if you're telling me, hey, there's some sports books out there that think this is a 100-point team, I would take that all day long.
Yes. So here's what I'm eager to see. All right. I have some concerns in goal. At Fleury's age, and he can't play a ton. Like he'll play a lot, but he can't. It can't be like, well, Flowers hot. He's just gonna play. The backup that they got from the Sens is unproven. And so I think that there's a little bit of concern there. And
you could always trade for a veteran on an expiring contract mid-season, like a Cam Talbot, if you needed to.
Very funny. And I am not going to underestimate the loss of Declan's guy. Fiala is a major loss. Like he gave you, I don't know, Declan, that there's, a Boldy who can just step into that role. I mean, what Fiala did when he got hot last year was special. Now, Kaprizov's so good that I think we're like, well, yeah, but he's not Kaprizov, and that's very true. But that's where I'm curious, because scoring goals and finding guys that can score goals is difficult, and Fiala for a month and a half, is that correct? Yep. Gave you a heater that you can't replicate by saying, hey, Matt Boldy, go score goals. It doesn't work like that.
Real quick, analytics Macadac is going to jump in here just for fun, and this is probably more of a Declan question, but I'm just going off point shares, which is kind of it's kind of like win shares in baseball. It's not perfect, but it's an all-encompassing way to measure your impact on how many points your team scored. And Kaprizov, number one by far on the roster, he was worth 13 point shares. Fiala was second at 9.2 among skaters. So Matt Boldy played he had exactly half of the total time on ice as Kevin Fiala. So Fiala logged, actually it's a little less than half. So Fiala logged, let's just call it 1,400 minutes on the ice, and Boldy logged 700 minutes on the ice. So exactly half. So if you double Boldy's, and it's not this easy, but if you double Boldy's time on ice and you double his point shares, he would have been 8.6 point shares behind Fiala's 9.2. Mm-hmm. So he was very productive in half the season or so at age 20. So if he gets a year older, gets more ice time, I think you're not looking at a huge drop off between what Fiala gave you and what Boldy could give you at age 21. Just going to throw it out there analytically.
Yeah, you're not going to, I think, replace him just 1v1. I mean, Fiala had, like 89, 90 points last year. He was unbelievable. And a lot of that came in the last 6-7 weeks of the season. But can you get guys like Boldy and Gaudreau and Rossi and all these committee guys basically to absorb some of that and basically spread that 90 points around 2 to 3 guys, you potentially can. Look, Fiala didn't deliver in the playoffs either. Like I love the guy. I think he's a dynamic forward when he's hot. He's legitimately one of the better players of the NHL when he's at his zenith, and he just commands the puck and he can do a lot of great things when he's playing his best possible game. But I do think the Wild aren't shipwrecked from losing a guy like that. They have candidates that can step in and still be pretty damn good. Piggybacking off Phil's statement is, I think there is some type of, do the Wild take a step back, right? And my statement would be the Wild aren't going to be a disaster next year. So Phil threw out his stakes website, whatever that is. It's not filet mignon.
Now I'm actually on stakes.com, the other one here.
More of a New York Strip kind of guy.
That's
my choice if I was at Manny's right now. New York Strip. I love me a good New York Strip. I know people would say the ribeye is like the prime. It is ribeye. I'm not denying that the ribeye
silver
is
butter
the
on
king,
steak, dude. You got to get that. That's what you get there.
Actually, you know what? There's some sort of like French. Some French web, I don't know. When you go to stakes.com, like the food spelling, it takes you to this site could be risky landing page. So
you're about to get in a lot of trouble.
But if you really look at even FanDuel too, like the Wild, there's only 7 teams that have better odds to win the President's Trophy in the NHL right now than the Wild. They're minus 380 on the money line to be a playoff team, which means that the odds are they're going to be in the playoffs. They'll firmly be in the top 4 or 5 teams in the Western Conference. They have a superstar player in Kirill Kaprizov, not just a nice player like Kevin Fiala. When he's hot, he's pretty good. They have a superstar. They have a core of defensemen who are one of the best groups in the entire NHL. They have up-and-coming players, the number 1 prospect pool in the league. Marco Rossi should be a stud. The Wild have a stew that can get hot and surprise people. So yes, I think, 112 points, 100-plus points last year, and that looked like one of the better Wild teams I've seen in my lifetime. And there might be a step back from 112 points. It's not going to be a step back where you're clawing and fighting your way probably for the last 8th spot in the Western Conference. The Wild are still going to be pretty damn good this season.
For the record, the projections beyond the Wild, so Wild 99.5 points for the 4th-ranked team in points. Vegas 97.5, Nashville 96, Blues 95, Kings 95. I think these are just over-unders. Stars 94, Canucks 92. So they have 10 teams that are all kind of clumped.
It's jumbled. The West is jumbled.
And then you go Jets 87.5. And then after that, there's like they got the Kraken next as a formidable team. But there's basically Kraken, Ducks, Sharks, Blackhawks, Coyotes that are kind of outside looking in, and then the other 11 teams are all very much in the playoff picture. So
that leads to my next statement too. So this is based on what we saw, more importantly, in the playoffs, and also from the Q&A that Russo did in The Athletic with one Dean Evason, and it's this: the head coach needs to be better. The head coach needs to be better. We get on Baldelli and the boys for not adjusting at times, right? And like, what's Rocco doing? And you know what? All justified, all incredibly fair. But we need to go back to the fact that in the playoffs, when the Wild needed some help, when they needed to make adjustments, perhaps a goaltending change, certainly line combinations, matchups, Dean Evason was slow on the trigger. And that's not acceptable. Like, you can't, coaching plays in the playoffs a huge role. Adjustments in the playoffs in hockey are huge. When you get to the playoffs, Dean needs to be far better, and his entire coaching staff, than what we saw. Because what did St. Louis do? Berube adjusted quickly. Bang. They lost, adjustments made. Dean basically sat back and said, things will be fine here. We're going to stick with Flower, or we're not going to change the lines up, or we're not going to try and match it. No, you don't have time. You don't have time. A best 4 of 7 is done relatively quickly. Dean Evason needs to do a better job of coaching this team, especially in the spring, than he did last season.
I think just preparing the team too, and he talked about this in a Q&A with Michael Russo last week, that just preparing the team for the playoffs, that it's a different feel. He's coaching them up differently, and he's preparing them differently. The Wild were mostly pretty damn good for the majority of the season last year, and they had made all those moves at the trade deadline. They bring in the decorated goalie that is Marc-Andre Fleury, and kind of changed the vibe a little bit in that locker room. But he kind of just sat back and said, no, this will figure it out. It'll figure it out. And I am under the belief that, hey, your players do have to give it. They have to be the ones to make the adjustments. But man, you can't just be sitting there when your backs are against the wall against a good St. Louis Blues team, and they said they'll figure it out. That was a mistake by Dean. That was a definite mistake, and he has probably learned from that, and hopefully he has to learn from it going into this season too.
This is great. God dang it. I miss these winter sports teams, man. They snap your heart in half in May or sometimes late April. But there's a lot to look forward to.
Sometimes
do you guys
March.
have any other? I know you guys are bringing Judd's hockey show back at full strength. Do you guys have any other final wild things before we get to a buffoon of the week?
Yeah, I got one more. It all comes down to goaltending basically with this team. It's kind of the only unknown I would say of the group. Marc-Andre Fleury and Philippe Gustafsson. You know, Marc-Andre Fleury too back to the odds even via FanDuel, so has the 10th best odds to win the Vezina. Going into this time last year, he was the reigning Vezina winner. Now, a lot of that's probably name. A lot of that probably has to do with who he is, not necessarily being the 10th best goalie in the NHL. But they have plenty of options in the future too. Jesper Wallsted's obviously the goaltender of the future. They have plenty of options behind these guys that they can figure it out. And you know, goaltending in hockey, it's a lot like putting on the golf course. It can mask everything that's terrible. It can fix everything that maybe isn't great, and also it can shipwreck all the good things you're doing when it comes down to that. It's a
great analogy.
They're very much the same thing. You know, Ricky Fowler for years couldn't do anything right but putt. Now Ricky Fowler can't do anything right, right?
And sometimes they can be based on lucky or unlucky stretches too, where you just like they're not falling in, or maybe they're just there's some puck luck involved in smaller sample size. That's a good comparison.
You can make all the greens and regulations in the world, but if you can't putt and you can't finish the game, it's not going to be a good time for you. So yeah, it all does come down to that goaltending for the Wild. It's really the biggest question mark I think going into the season.
All right, boys, there we go. Wild
Good stuff.
training camp firing up. Yeah, Judd's hockey show. If you haven't partaken yet, you guys are going to be back full blast on the Judd's Hockey Show podcast feed. You can find those episodes on the Mackie and Judd podcast feed and also on the Score North YouTube channel. So check those out. And we will dive into more Timberwolves discussion too. We've been going weekly with flagrant howls throughout the offseason. Kyle Teige and me. Yeah, Kyle Teige and me.
Yeah, join me.
Yeah, tapping into
Not
that
join
journalism degree from the University of Minnesota.
Mom,
We had Michael Grady, the new TV voice and face of the Timberwolves. Recently, Craig Kilborn on the show a few weeks ago, diehard Timberwolves fan. And then Dane Moore was on to help do a deep dive into Rudy Gobert and what the team could look like with him. So we've got these little peripheral spin-off podcasts off of Mackie and Judd to highlight just Wolves talk, just Wild talk. And I don't think we're going to be doing a lot of discussion about the Minnesota Twins unless there's big news in the coming months, unless there's an overwhelming audience turnaround in terms of interest. But I do have a buffoon of the week for you guys.
That is
Twins related. Just so many things over the weekend.
bucket
I
hat.
got my
Judd?
Twins hat on.
Bucket
Oh, look
hat,
at that.
Judd?
Little Twins
Yep.
bucket hat. Nice,
Nice.
dude.
My bucket hat, because I'm very excited to talk
When
about
did you
the
get the bucket hat?
giveaway.
When? I wasn't. I'm a season ticket holder. I would love the bucket hat.
Dude, I was in the press box.
I've given you bobbleheads.
Chuck threw it. Dude, it's all yours.
Are you still allowed in the press box after all of the vitriol you've been
We're gonna
spewing
find
lately?
out in the final 6 home games if my press pass still works. Or,
No, here's what you do. So Dick Bramer finally blocked you on Twitter. So now
Yeah.
all three of us have been. I don't think you've been antagonistic. Declan and I were just like making innocent
I've been
comments about
antagonistic.
things. You've been antagonistic.
Yes.
I think you
Right-handed
should
toast.
block him in person. I think you should take it a step further. And when you run into him awkwardly in the elevator, you should say, "You're blocked. I'm
Richard,
blocking
how
you."
are you?
Very
Let the elevator
Seinfeld-like.
close.
Yeah.
I'm blocking you. You're not blocking me. I'm blocking you. You're blocked. George
So,
Costanza.
my buffoon of the week here for you guys is the algorithm. The Twins algorithm.
Okay.
So on Saturday night, season's on life support. But correct me if I'm wrong, the team going into game 2 of the doubleheader, the team was still very much, okay, this has been rough, but let's win tonight. Let's win Sunday. Let's win Monday. Let's turn this thing around. They had not waved the white flag going into game 2 of the doubleheader. At least, like, as far as we know.
Right.
So, it's a must-win game. Carlos Correa has 3 weeks left on his $35 million one-year commitment he signed with the Minnesota Twins, with 2 then player options on top of it. But it's possible this is the last 3 weeks that you're even going to have Carlos Correa. You don't know. It's up to him, right? The Twins elect to rest Carlos Correa by putting him in the designated hitter spot for Game 2 of this doubleheader. And they run Jermaine Palacios out there at shortstop defensively and in the lineup instead. Because beep, burp, 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 beep, burp, 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 the algorithm says, oh, it's time for a rest. We can't possibly, in a must-win season-on-the-line game, the highest-paid infielder in baseball that physically may not be 100%, but like he's fine enough to be hitting in the second game.
Yeah. Yes.
But beep, burp, 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 burp. Oh, we need to rest him. He can't possibly play shortstop in this game. And so what happens? And I'm not trying to dump on Palacios because I actually think Palacios could be a serviceable utility guy at some point. But the poor guy is put into the spotlight here in a must-win season-on-the-line game. Goes 0 for 6 with 8 runners left on base. And then butchers a ground ball with 2 outs in the 15th that allows the game-winning run to score from third base. Palacios, by the way, is 0 for September at this point, and he just wasn't handling that ground ball in a calm way because he's probably a little nervous being out in the middle of a pennant race in air quotes. No,
Yeah.
couldn't possibly have Carlos Correa play 2 games in one day because burp, 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 beep, burp, rest. So the algorithm is my buffoon of the week for the Twins.
You'll love this. So post game, after that game, so after Rocco and the boys had seen this, right? So it's like, oh boy, we probably should have played Correa. Rocco told reporters either after the game or Sunday morning, a lot of guys left the ballpark banged up last night. We are going to have to find time to sit more guys throughout the rest of the
He said this after the doubleheader?
after
or what?
yeah so
Dude,
so after
what, like,
seeing
do you guys have like torn UCLs?
Well,
like what are the
and here's the maddening thing. Arise is playing, he can barely walk or run. But you know what? He's playing because they need him to play. And by the way, he's not complaining. He's just limping around. Which
is how baseball works.
Yes. Well, and
guys
it's
feel
also,
like garbage at the end of 8 months of spring training and a season.
And this also leads me to a very simple question too, which is this. So we are talking about, oh, the Twins have 17 guys hurt. I mean, how are they supposed to win when they're hurt? Here's my question. How many guys who are hurt really can't play? For instance, Polanco on Friday is deemed to be able to play for St. Paul in a AAA game. They hope to play him 7. He plays 5. He's out. I'd like to know if he can play. Like when they just pull him out because they are so adamant about sitting guys and resting guys and oh my God. And I think Arise is basically told them, screw you, I'm playing. That's what I think he's done.
Honestly, that's what Polanco, and I'll rip Correa a little bit too. That's what Correa should have said.
Yeah, you're
guys,
right. I agree.
We need to win this game. All due respect to Jermaine Palacios, this is not a game for Jermaine Palacios.
Right.
This is a game for Carlos Correa, not to be DHing, to be playing shortstop. Period.
You didn't sign me to that contract so that I could DH in the second game of a double header against a rival who we are, in our opinion, competing with. That's what you should have told Rocco. I'm playing.
You know, I understand, and I think this is where I was just brawling with like Twins Daily and other people on Twitter this weekend.
Glorious.
And the main point, because it's just the Twins are trying to, hey, and rightfully so, like they're trying to save some face here. It's a second colossally disappointing season, and the Twins are trying to say, oh my God, the injuries are just, and even on the broadcast for 3 hours, it's like, well, God, the injuries, and look at this lineup. By the way, look at the bottom third of Cleveland's lineup every night. They're running out 3 of the, like some of the worst 7, 8, 9 hitters in baseball, and they're still, 12 games over 500, whatever they are. So injuries aren't a unique problem. Injuries have been a huge problem. So I'm not trying to downplay like not having Buxton. It is a problem. But people have taken it so far. They're ignoring all the other things and decisions that are going into the core of why the Twins aren't better these last couple seasons.
Right.
And a decision like that to sit Carlos Correa on the bench defensively and put Jermaine Palacios out as if these guys are all beep, burp, 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 interchangeable in a game like that. Unless you're waving the white flag, you're asking for that ball to get butchered. Well, we expect those guys to make plays. Well, come on. Really? I mean,
So
put your best players out there in a must-win game. They can rest soon enough, you know?
So they can't run the bases. They're terrible there. I believe it was on, not surprisingly, the radio broadcast on Saturday. Atterbury brought up this point too. I guess the advanced metrics say infield-wise, the Twins are terrible too.
Defensively?
Defensively. Infield-wise, they're not good.
Yeah.
But anyway, these are the points. Like this is, so if you have guys hurt, your quote unquote best guys hurt, which Buxton is, I would argue about the entire list of they lost, Miguel Sano. That was a blessing. Miranda's been great, but the point is, they have to win games, and this is what drives me nuts. In between the margins, taking the extra base, not being thrown out at third, not having your third base coach consistently get guys thrown out at home. Defensively, right? Like, if you're missing guys, how do you win games? You win games by being smarter and certainly more sound at the little things that fans don't see but are incredibly important. And that's what drives me nuts here. Make plays in the infield. Run the bases smart. Take good at-bats. Find ways to, if you have to, manufacture things. And they don't do that. They are a dumb baseball team. That's what drives me up the wall.
There was another debate in that extra innings game because the Twins they don't bunt. And I agree largely you should not be bunting for the most part because you're just giving away outs. Mm-hmm. But when you have hitters in your lineup like Contreras, who's hitting like a buck, what's he hitting, like a $140 or something? $120?
Great mustache.
Shouldn't be any close to an MLB lineup. No.
Like, has almost no chance of getting a hit in extra innings. Like, runner on second base. I get you get a runner on second base. You're probably trying to score and give as many cracks at like putting a ball in the outfield as possible. But you're also maybe trying to score a crooked number. But at a certain point, when you have a guy like that at the plate, he's not going to get a hit. Statistically, he's not going to get a hit. He literally has like a 12 to 15% chance of getting a hit in that spot. And so if you look at, I'm not going to get into the weeds analytically here, but you actually have a better chance of scoring one run in an inning on average. Forget about the fact that the hitter is hitting 120, which helps this argument even more. You have a better chance of scoring a run in an inning with a runner on third and one out than having a runner on second and nobody out. Mm-hmm. So if you have three great hitters coming up, yes, take your shot at one of them getting a single. But if you have a couple garbage hitters coming up, move a guy to third. And they refuse to take context into some of these decisions.
Correct.
And another thing, too, with the injuries. So they've racked up 2,000 injury days this season, which is like third most in baseball. And Cleveland has racked up a third of that. But if you look at the top 10 players who've missed days, those top 10 players for the Twins make up 75% of their injury time. And those players are Kenta Maeda, who you've known about for a year. You had all offseason to plan for his departure. And you brought in Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer to replace Kenta Maeda. Those were choices that you made. You said 40% of our rotation is going to be made up of guys that can't pitch beyond 4 2/3 innings or that we don't trust. That is your decision as a front office. Randy Dobnak is on this list. Was he altering your season in any meaningful way? Was anyone saying, boy, if only the Twins had
No, he's
Randy
another
Dobnak?
guy. He doesn't count. Agreed.
Jorge Alcala is a good reliever. 2 years ago, he was worth 0.3 wins above replacement. Mm-hmm. So he's good, but he's not like a lights out. He's not Duran. He's not a lights out, game changing reliever. Is he nice depth? Yes. Is he a season altering guy? No. He was worth 0.3 wins above replacement.
He can be replaced. Exactly.
Jean Romero, not a factor. Miguel Sano. I mean, like Judd said, it's actually better that you swapped him out for Jose Miranda, right?
Yep.
Cody Stashak, another depth reliever guy, not a season-altering guy. Maybe you could say, well, yeah, but now you've lost 2 depth relievers. You can trade for depth relievers, and they did, right? Go get a Fulmer, whatever. Chris Paddock, big loss, self-inflicted. Mm-hmm. You took on a high level of risk trading for a pitcher that had a partially torn UCL at the end of last season, and the high risk you took on. You said, hit me, blackjack dealer. It's like, are you sure, dude? You're sitting on 18, whatever. Well, no, we got a feeling. We got a feeling about this one, and they were wrong. Like it was. I get that you're going to take some risks, but they took a risk. It was wrong. Daniel Colombe, or Colombe, however you pronounce it.
No.
Another. It's a depth reliever. You know, and again, you add up the depth relievers. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but let's put it all into context. Bailey Ober, good, solid number 4, number 5 starter. Probably at his best, like a 2 wins above replacement pitcher. So again, it's a loss. Royce Lewis, I think, if he would have kept Royce Lewis is probably the biggest loss because that's a guy that you could trust at shortstop, maybe in center field. But going into the season, the reason they signed Correa is because they didn't expect Royce Lewis to be part of their plans at all, really, this season. So
correct, and that's why that's silly. Yes, I agree.
I think what's happening is injuries are being painted as like 90% of the reason why this team faltered, and I'm saying it's actually more like 30%. Let's look deeper at some of the decisions that they've made and the things that are happening beyond injuries. Don't let injuries cover all the other things that they've done wrong.
And you don't even have to look that deep, though. That's the thing is watch the games. Like, how do you not watch the games and say this team does some of the stupidest things? The self-inflicted wounds, and this is what drives me crazy. The self-inflicted wounds of this team across the board, from the decisions on pitching to how they approach the game itself, are so obvious on a nightly basis. Like, that's why I call this team despicable. Because they're a despicable collection to watch. They do so much to defeat themselves before even worrying about the opponent. And that's, and instead we look for, well, I mean, with all those guys hurt. And the other thing too is, okay, Buxton being out really hurts because when Buxton is healthy and playing, he's great. But if you sat down before the season and looked at the games that Buxton has played with his history and said, well, no, we can get him to 140 or something. You were crazy again.
Dude, this is the second most games. This is the second most games he's ever played.
Which is,
it's actually kind of a win.
but I've spent 2 or 3 years saying if you don't like your options to replace Buxton when he's hurt, not if, when he's hurt, then you need to go out and sign a center fielder who can play consistently out there, maybe hit a bit, but can be plugged in to replace him. If you're a contender. Now I will say this, and this question has not been asked, nor will it be, but here's the other question that is, I think, very pertinent. When the season started, what did the Twins brass think of its chances? Because there is a very, very good case to be made that the Paddock trade was made in the face of it being stupid, because they thought, you know what? We ain't that good. If we lose him, we don't care that much for 2022. Like, that's what it says to me, but that's not going to be broached.
Well, that's another thing that keeps getting brought up, like the Twins defenders out there. Well, and this is correct, by the way. What I'm about to say is correct, that most of the projection sites had them as kind of a 500 team, that even with Correa, that the expectation was that this was going to be about a 500 team. And so if you're the front office, you might say, well, yeah, even with Correa, we didn't really expect to. And my question would be, wait, we're 6 years into this thing.
You're right.
Why is the expectation that you're a 500 team in a division that turned out to be much weaker? And yes, I know injuries play a role, but there's so much more than injuries that should be talked about. And I feel like it's just being washed away by, well, what are they supposed to do? Just don't be the worst base running team in the league. They are 30 or 35 runs worse just on the base pass than the best team or two at the top of that list. They are, I pointed this out too in fighting with people over the weekend on the internet. They are, it's like, here are some of the things that are sort of injury related if you want to dig a little, like if you've got bad hitters up with runners in scoring position, I get that. But third time through the order with their pitching staff, they have I think it's the worst or second worst OPS against third time through the order. It's like 200 points worse than the Rays, who are great third time through the order. Why is that? Your starting pitching staff that you designed has been intact for 80% or more of the starts this season. Why are they so bad third time through the order? Either you're not doing something strategically to get them through a third time through the order, or you're signing pitchers like Bundy and Archer that are incapable of pitching a third time through the order, thus you tax your bullpen. It's like, it's not bad luck. It's decisions that are made. It's roster construction. Mm-hmm. So, anyhow.
my last thing on it, and just honestly, I have broken up with the Twins, the 2022 Twins. Like I have moved on. They are gaslighters. The defenders, everything about this team is gaslighting. You are holding on to some type of hope and some type of disbelief that everyone is telling you it is time to look elsewhere in your life and in this aspect. And for whatever reason, you're clutching to these few things that only you believe in, that you are trying to prove people wrong on. It's not working. You deserve something better in your life. You don't have to keep clinging on to the same damn thing over and over again. Am I talking about the Twins or am I talking about my previous relationships? They both work. They both work. They are in the same web. You can move on and find something else, man. They are gaslighters. It's Katie Thurston versus Greg all over again from The Bachelorette, right, Phil? It's the same damn thing. I'm sick of them.
There's some gaslighting. I finally watched the finale for this last season. I jumped in at the last minute. There's some gaslighting last week too.
Nice
with the Bachelorettes.
Nice.
The Bachelorettes, plural, by the way, Judd. They had 2 Bachelorettes.
Oh wow, really?
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyhow, all right, we got that off our chests.
All blocked by Dick now.
We good?
We're all blocked by Dick Bramer.
You're a little antagonistic, okay?
I'm trying to help. I'm trying to help Bally's.
Without combing through and checking the actual math, I think Judd added Bally Sports North in a tweet at least 9.5 times between Friday
And you know what we got now, boys? The right-handed toast with a surly. Whenever they lose, I'm giving them a right-handed toast. All I'm trying to do is help with programming, with executive decisions.
I can't take you seriously with the bucket hat.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Because now you know what I am? I've joined the brigade. Hopeless Homer. Go Twins.
I hope they win 14-1 to cap off this, to take the momentum into the last 2 weeks. All right. We'll see you guys. By the way, Vikings Vent Line on the Purple Daily YouTube channel right after Vikings Eagles. We'll see you guys.